I am Ethan Cole, 27, and for most of my life, I believe my father abandoned my mother and me because money mattered more to him than family. My mother, Laura Cole, raised me alone and taught me never to trust my father or the wealthy Cole family. Everything changes when my estranged father, billionaire businessman Richard Cole, dies. His lawyer tells me Richard left me $200 million. But before I can accept it, my mother begs me to reject the inheritance. At first, I believe she is protecting me from the family that destroyed our lives. Then I discover that accepting the inheritance will give me access to sealed documents my father spent years protecting. Those documents reveal something far worse than abandonment. My mother has been lying to me for 20 years. And the $200 million was never just an inheritance. It was my father's final attempt to make sure I discovered the truth. My father died on a Tuesday morning. I was 27 years old, and I felt almost nothing when I heard the news. For nearly 20 years, Richard Cole had been more of a name than a father to me. He was the billionaire businessman people praised in magazines, the man who built an empire, while my mother and I learned how to survive without him. My phone rang while I was at home. Is this Ethan Cole? Yes. My name is Daniel Mercer. I was your father's attorney. I went still. There was a brief silence. Your father passed away last night. I stared at the wall. I expected anger, maybe sadness. Instead, I felt empty. Why are you calling me? Because Richard left specific instructions regarding you. I almost laughed. That's interesting. He had 20 years to give me instructions. Daniel didn't react. There will be a reading of his will. He requested that you attend personally. I don't want anything from him. I understand. No, you don't. My grip tightened around the phone. He walked away from us. My mother worked 2 jobs while he became richer every year. Whatever he left behind can stay with his precious company. Daniel paused. Come to the reading, Ethan. After that, you can decide what you want. I was about to refuse when my mother entered the room. Laura took one look at my face. What happened? I lowered the phone. Richard died. The color disappeared from her face. For years, whenever my father came up, Mom spoke about him with bitterness. She called him selfish, cold, a man who cared more about money than family. I expected relief. Instead, her hand reached for the back of a chair. Last night, who called you? His lawyer. Her eyes snapped toward the phone. What does he want? He wants me at the will reading. No. The word came too fast. I frowned. Mom, you don't need to go. It doesn't matter. I wasn't planning to. She stepped closer. Promise me. Something in her voice bothered me. Why are you acting like this? Because Richard hurt us enough while he was alive. Her fingers trembled. He doesn't get to reach into our lives after he's dead. I watched her carefully. She wasn't furious. She was frightened. That was the reason I went. Later, I sat beside her across from Daniel Mercer in a quiet office. He looked older than I expected, calm and serious, with a thick folder resting in front of him. Daniel opened it. Richard Cole left instructions concerning several assets. I leaned back. Just say what he left me. My mother shifted beside me. Daniel looked directly at me. Your father left you assets valued at approximately $200 million. I stopped breathing. What? He continued before I could recover. The inheritance also includes controlling rights connected to a private family trust. 200 million? My voice sounded strange even to me. My mother suddenly grabbed my arm. Her fingers dug into my sleeve. Ethan, you cannot accept that money. I turned toward her. Her face was pale. Mom! She shook her head. Don't do it. I stared at her. She wasn't angry. She was scared. Why? Her grip tightened. Then she leaned closer and whispered, because your father didn't leave you that money out of love. The moment we stepped out of Daniel's office, I turned to my mother. What did you mean? Laura kept walking. Ethan, not here. I followed her down the hallway. No, you just told me my dead father didn't leave me $200 million out of love. You don't get to say something like that and walk away. She stopped. Her shoulders were tight. Richard always knew how to control people. He's dead. That never stopped him from planning ahead. I stared at her. So you think the inheritance is some kind of trap? I think it's his last attempt to control you. Her voice cracked slightly. He controlled everything when we were together. Money, lawyers, people. He always needed the final word. I wanted to challenge her, but she looked exhausted. Then she turned toward me. You were 7 when he disappeared from your life. Ethan, I remember. Do you remember waiting for him? I looked away. Yes. Do you remember asking me why he never came? My chest tightened. She continued before I could answer. I worked 2 jobs while he built his fortune. I counted every dollar. I worried about rent. I worried about food. And where was he? I said nothing. Her eyes filled with tears. Now he's dead. And suddenly he wants to be your father by leaving you money? The anger inside me weakened. For a moment, I felt ashamed. She had been there. He hadn't. I shouldn't have questioned you, I said quietly. Laura reached for my hand. Just reject it, Ethan. I nodded, but something inside me still felt unsettled. Later that day, my phone rang. Daniel. I stepped away before answering. What is it? There's something I couldn't discuss in front of your mother. My stomach tightened. What? Your father attached a sealed archive to the family trust. I went silent. What kind of archive? I can't release its contents unless you formally accept the trust. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Because those were Richard's instructions. I rubbed my forehead. And my mother doesn't know? Not about the archive. That changed everything. Before I could respond, Daniel added, There is someone else you should speak with. When I returned to his office, a woman was waiting beside him. This is Rachel Bennett, Daniel said. She administers the trust. Rachel opened a folder. I reviewed the inheritance structure. I sat across from her. Is there debt attached to it? No. Legal liability? Not that would explain your mother's reaction. Hidden obligations? She shook her head. The assets are legitimate. The trust itself does not place you under some secret financial burden. I leaned back slowly. Then why was Mom terrified? That evening, I found her in my childhood room. She was kneeling beside several old boxes. What are you doing? Laura jumped. Cleaning. At night, she quickly closed one box. These things have been sitting here for years. Her eyes avoided mine. Then she stood. I'll finish tomorrow. After she left, I waited. Something inside me told me to look. I opened the box. Old papers. School drawings. Faded photographs. Then I saw one picture pushed beneath the others. My breath caught. Richard was holding me. I looked about 7. His arm was around my shoulders, and I was smiling. I turned the photograph over. 5 words were written on the back in his handwriting. She won't let me see him. I read the sentence again. Then again. For the first time in 20 years. I wondered whether my father actually abandoned me. I carried the photograph into the kitchen. The next morning, my mother looked up from the table. What is this? I placed it in front of her. She froze. For a few seconds, she said nothing. Then she picked it up and turned it over. Her eyes stopped on the words. She won't let me see him. I watched her face. Did Dad write that? Laura set the photograph down. Richard wrote many things. That isn't an answer. She looked at me. He knew how to manipulate people, Ethan. So this was manipulation? Yes. He was holding me. You were a child. And he wrote that you wouldn't let him see me. Her jaw tightened. You're letting one sentence change 20 years of your life. I felt anger rise in my chest. You told me he never wanted me. He didn't. Then why write this? She stood. Because Richard wanted people to believe he was the victim. Her voice broke. I raised you. I stayed when he didn't. I worked 2 jobs. I gave you everything I had. I looked away. Those words hurt because they were true. Almost every important memory from my childhood had my mother in it. When I was sick, she stayed beside me. When money was short, she skipped things so I wouldn't have to. When I cried because my father wasn't there, she held me. Please, she whispered, trust the person who actually raised you. I wanted to. More than anything, I wanted the photograph to mean nothing. But doubt had already found a place inside me. Later, I called Daniel. I need to see you. I didn't tell my mother. When I arrived at his office, several envelopes were waiting on the desk. What are those? Letters from your father. I stared at them. To me? Yes. Why haven't I seen them before? Richard instructed me to release them after his death. My hands felt cold as I picked up the first envelope. It had my name on it. I opened another, then another. Birthdays, Christmases, apologies for missing days that mattered. One letter mentioned a gift being returned unopened. Another described another failed attempt to contact me. I looked at Daniel. He kept writing? For years. Why didn't I get any of these? I can't answer that for you. A voice behind me did. Because your father never stopped trying. I turned. Daniel gestured toward the woman standing near the door. This is Margaret Cole, Richard's older sister. She looked at me with tired eyes. Ethan, your father made mistakes. Plenty of them. But he did try to see you. I felt my defenses rise. You were his sister. Yes. So of course you'd say that. She didn't argue. Instead, she opened a folder. You shouldn't believe me just because I loved him. She slid several documents across the desk. Believe these. I looked down. Court filings. Visitation requests. One after another. Richard Cole had repeatedly asked for access to me after the divorce. My pulse grew louder in my ears. Then I saw the responses. My mother's name. Laura Cole. Her signature appeared on documents opposing the requests. I read one page twice. Then another. The anger I expected never came. What I felt was worse. Confusion. For 20 years, she had told me he never tried. So why had she fought every attempt he made? I looked at Daniel. Why? He held my gaze. The answer may be inside the sealed archive. My stomach tightened. Then open it. I can't. Why not? Because Richard made one condition absolute. Daniel leaned forward. You only get the archive after you formally accept the $200 million. I barely slept that night. Daniel's words kept repeating in my head. I could have the truth, but only if I accepted the inheritance. $200 million. The number should have excited me. Instead, it felt like a knife placed between my mother and me. If I accepted it, I knew what Laura would think, that I had chosen Richard over her. But if I rejected it, I would be giving up the only chance I had to understand why she spent 20 years hiding the truth from me. The next morning, I found her waiting for me. You met Daniel again. It wasn't a question. I stopped. How do you know? I know you. Her eyes were already wet. What did he tell you? There are more records. Her face tightened. What kind of records? I don't know yet. Then leave them alone. I stared at her. Why are you so afraid of me seeing them? I'm afraid of what Richard is doing to us. He's dead, Mom. And he's still winning. Her voice broke. You're looking at me differently. How am I supposed to look at you? I raised you. I know. I worked until I could barely stand. I know. I gave up everything for you. I know. Then why isn't that enough? The question hit me harder than I expected. I stepped closer. It is enough to make me love you. She waited, but it isn't enough to make me stop asking questions. Tears rolled down her face. You don't understand what you're doing. Then explain it. I can't. Why? She shook her head. Just trust me. I felt something inside me crack. That is what I've done my entire life. She wiped her face. And now you're choosing him. No. Yes, you are. I'm choosing to know the truth. If you accept that money, Ethan, I'm done. I froze. What? She looked straight at me. If you take Richard's inheritance, don't come back to me. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The money didn't hurt. The threat did. You'd leave my life over this? You're the one making the choice. I stared at the woman who had raised me. Then I finally understood. She wasn't asking me to trust her. She was asking me to prove my love by staying ignorant. I picked up my keys. Where are you going? To Daniel. Her face fell. Ethan, don't. I walked out anyway. At Daniel's office. The papers were already waiting. Rachel sat across from me. Once you sign, she said, I can begin transferring control of the trust. Daniel placed a pen beside the documents. I stared at my name on the page. You're certain? He asked. No. He waited. But I'm signing. I picked up the pen. My hand shook once. Then I wrote my name. Rachel gathered the documents. I'll begin the transfer. Daniel turned toward a locked cabinet. He removed several thick files and placed them on the table. This is Richard's private archive. My pulse quickened. Inside were legal records, recordings, bank statements, and correspondence stretching across 2 decades. I started reading. One name appeared again and again. Victor Hale. Who is he? Daniel looked at me. Your mother's former attorney. I kept reading. And he was also your father's financial advisor. That made me look up. Richard had accused Victor of moving company money through hidden accounts shortly before my parents separated. I turned another page. Then another. My breathing slowed. There were transfer records, dates, account numbers, amounts, and one destination connected to Laura. I stared at the total. It wasn't $200 million, but it was millions. My hands went cold. Suddenly, my mother's fear made sense in a way I didn't want it to. She may not have been protecting me from my father's money. She may have been protecting herself from what came with it. I could have gone home and confronted my mother that night. I didn't. The bank records were ugly, but I wanted facts before anger. So I stayed with Daniel and Rachel. Start from the beginning. I said. Rachel turned several pages toward me. Victor Hale had access to parts of your father's company finances. And he moved money? According to these records, unauthorized transfers were routed through hidden accounts. I pointed to Laura's name. And this? Daniel answered carefully. Some of the money eventually reached a shell company connected to your mother. My jaw tightened. Did she know? That is less clear. Rachel tapped another document. Laura later claimed she didn't understand where the money came from. I looked at both of them. So either she was involved or she was being used. Possibly, Daniel said. I hated that answer. I wanted something simple. A villain. A victim. Instead, every new document made the past messier. Daniel arranged another meeting for me. Samuel Ortiz had once been my father's security chief. He was retired now, but his memory of my parents' breakup was sharp. He sat across from me and studied my face. You look like Richard did when he was trying not to lose his temper. I don't want stories about him. Good. Samuel leaned back. You need facts. I nodded. What happened? Your father discovered suspicious transfers. At first, he thought someone inside the company was stealing from him. Victor? That became his belief. And my mother? Samuel hesitated. Richard believed Victor was using Laura to get access to confidential financial information. My stomach twisted. Did she help him? I don't know how much she understood at first. At first, Samuel's expression hardened. When Richard confronted them, everything exploded. What did my mother do? She became terrified. Of Richard, of what could happen next. He folded his hands. She thought she might lose custody of you. She also feared the money could drag her into a criminal investigation. I stared at him. So she took me. Yes. And then the custody fight became ugly. My voice dropped. My father kept asking to see me. Samuel nodded, long after the financial mess started. That hurt more than the millions. The money was numbers on paper. This was my childhood. He didn't stop? No. I swallowed hard. He kept trying to reach you. For years, I had imagined Richard living comfortably while forgetting I existed. Now I had letters proving the opposite. When I finally went home, Laura was sitting alone. I placed the letters on the table between us. She looked at them, then at me. You knew, I said. She didn't answer. You knew, he kept writing. Her eyes filled with tears. Yes. The word barely came out. I felt something cold settle inside me. And the visitation requests? She lowered her head. Yes, you told me he abandoned me. I was trying to protect you. From what? She wiped her face. Everything that was happening. I pushed one of the financial records toward her. And this? She stared at it. Victor handled those accounts. Money went to a company connected to you. I didn't understand what he was doing. You expect me to believe that? She looked up sharply. He manipulated me, Ethan. Then why hide it for 20 years? Because I was scared. Her voice cracked. By the time I understood how bad it was, I thought I could lose you. I thought your father would destroy me. I shook my head. So you decided to make me hate him instead? She flinched. I wanted to stay angry. Then she said something I never expected. Your father wasn't innocent either. I stopped. What does that mean? Laura stared at the letters for a long moment. Then she looked directly at me. That $200 million Richard left you? My chest tightened. She swallowed. Some of that money should never belong to him. I wanted to believe my father now. That was the dangerous part. After 20 years of hearing one version of the story, I could have easily replaced it with another. Laura lied. That did not automatically make Richard innocent. So I looked at my mother and said, "Tell me everything." She went quiet. "No more half-truths," I said. "No more protecting me." Her eyes dropped. Then she whispered, "Victor and I had an affair." The words landed harder than I expected. "While you were still married to Dad?" "Yes." I leaned back. "For how long?" "During the final months." I stared at her. "And the company records?" She swallowed. "Victor told me Richard was hiding money from business partners." "So you helped him?" "I gave him access to information." "What kind?" "Financial information. Things Richard kept private." I felt anger rise again. "You knew that was wrong." "I thought Victor was exposing him." "Did you ever verify that?" Her silence answered me. I looked away. "So you trusted Victor because you wanted to believe the worst about Dad." Laura's face tightened. "Richard gave me reasons." "What reasons?" "He destroyed people in business." That part turned out to be true. I went back to the archive and found records of aggressive lawsuits, hostile deals, and former partners pushed out after bitter fights. Richard had built his empire by winning, and sometimes winning seemed to matter more to him than anything else. Daniel arranged another meeting for me. Nathan Brooks had once worked for my father. I asked him directly, "Was Richard honest?" Nathan gave me a tired smile. "That depends on what you mean. Was he ruthless?" "Yes." "Did he destroy former partners?" "He crushed people in legal battles." So my mother was right about that part. I leaned forward. "What about the fraud?" Nathan's expression changed. "The specific scheme she described?" "Yes." "It was never proven." "Never." He shook his head. "I saw Richard do hard things. I saw him fight dirty inside the law. But I never saw proof that he stole the money Victor claimed he stole. That left me exactly where I had been trying not to end up, between two damaged people, neither completely innocent, neither completely truthful." Back at Daniel's office, I opened another section of the archive. Inside was a recording marked with my name. I stared at it. Did he make this for me? Daniel nodded. I pressed play. My father's voice filled the room. "Ethan, if you're hearing this, then you already know enough to hate me for some things." I froze. Richard continued. "I was proud. Too proud." His voice sounded older than I remembered. "When your mother and I began fighting, I cared more about winning than fixing anything." I looked down. "I treated the divorce like a business battle." He paused. "And I didn't understand what losing you would do to both of us until it was too late." My throat tightened. For the first time, he wasn't blaming Laura. He was blaming himself. Then his tone changed. "There's one thing you need to understand about the inheritance." I looked at Daniel. Richard continued. "The $200 million was not chosen at random." My pulse quickened. "That amount represents the present value of company shares I intended to place in your name when you were a child." I stopped breathing. "Shares. Mine." Then came the part that made my stomach turn. Those shares were signed away during the divorce. I gripped the edge of the table. Richard's voice became quieter. Your mother signed the documents. I looked at Daniel. She signed away my shares? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I stared at the recording. $200 million. It wasn't just an inheritance. It was something my father believed had belonged to me long before he died. Then Richard spoke again. His final words were slower, more serious. There's one last thing you must know. I leaned closer. If Victor Hale learns you accepted the trust, he will come back. Richard's warning stayed in my head long after the recording ended. If Victor Hale learns you accepted the trust, he will come back. I wanted to believe it was just another fear my father had carried for too long. Then Laura's phone rang. She looked at the screen and went pale. Who is it? I asked. She didn't answer. Mom. Her hand trembled. Victor. I stared at her. You still have his number? She lowered the phone. He contacts me sometimes. My chest tightened. Sometimes. She looked away. For years. I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. You told me he manipulated you. You told me you were scared of him, and you've been talking to him this whole time. I didn't want to. Then why did you? Because he knew things. So did Dad. Victor knew what could happen if those records ever came out. The phone stopped ringing. A second later, a message appeared. Laura didn't show it to me. I held out my hand. Give me the phone. No. Mom. Her eyes filled with fear. He knows you accepted the trust. My stomach dropped. How? The transfer became public. I remembered Richard's warning. Victor had come back. What does he want? Laura sat down slowly. He believes Richard kept evidence. He did. I know. She covered her face. He always said if those files were opened, everything could start again. What could start again? The investigation. I stared at her. So that's why you wanted me to reject the inheritance. She looked up. I was trying to protect you. And yourself. Her silence hurt more than an argument. Say it. Yes. Her voice broke. I was protecting myself too. I stepped away. For weeks, I had wanted the truth. Now every truth seemed to come with another betrayal. Laura wiped her eyes. Victor told me that if Richard's evidence ever surfaced, he would make sure I took the blame. And you believed him? Yes. Why? Because he already used me once. I looked back at her, and now he'll do whatever he can to save himself. That was enough. I took everything to Daniel. Rachel joined us as we spread the records across the table. We stopped guessing. I said, we follow the money. Daniel nodded. And we do this legally. That was how Detective Marcus Reed became involved. He reviewed the archived transfers, Victor's communications, and the old financial records. After hours of questions, he looked at me. This is not enough by itself. My heart sank. Then what do you need? Someone who can connect Victor directly to the scheme. I already knew who that person was. My mother. When I told Laura, she went silent. If I testify, she whispered, I could still be charged. Yes. And if I don't, Victor may walk away. She stared at the floor. For once, I didn't tell her what choice to make. It had to be hers. The next morning, she called me. I'll testify. I closed my eyes. You understand what that means? Yes. Why now? Her answer came quietly. Because I spent 20 years protecting myself with lies. I won't make you live with another one. Her testimony changed everything. Victor tried to blame her. He claimed Laura had acted alone and that he knew nothing about the hidden transfers. But Richard's archive showed the structure of the accounts, Victor's instructions, and the financial trail connecting him to the scheme. Detective Reed looked at the evidence. This is enough to move forward. For the first time, Victor wasn't controlling the story. Authorities began acting against him. I expected to feel victorious. Instead, I felt exhausted. My mother had finally chosen the truth, but only after the truth had already torn my family apart. That evening, Daniel called me back to his office. There's one more thing. He placed a sealed envelope on the desk. I stared at it. Another financial record? No. Then what? A final letter from your father. I picked it up. On the front, Richard had written, "To my son, if he ever learns enough to hate both of us." My throat tightened. I opened the envelope knowing that the truth had already destroyed the family I thought I had. I opened my father's final letter expecting excuses. Instead, the first word stopped me. "Ethan, don't make me a hero because your mother lied to you." I read the sentence twice. Richard continued, "I failed you in ways money cannot repair." My throat tightened. He admitted that anger had controlled him during the divorce. Pride had made every disagreement feel like a battle he needed to win. "I treated your mother like an enemy," he wrote. "And somewhere in that fight, I forgot that you were the one paying the highest price." I lowered the letter. For weeks, I had been rebuilding my image of him. Now he was tearing it down himself. He admitted that business consumed years. He should have spent finding better ways to fight for me. Then I reached the part about the inheritance. The $200 million cannot give you back your childhood. I stared at the page. It cannot replace birthdays, missed conversations, or the years we lost. Don't let the money decide whether I deserve your forgiveness. I closed my eyes. That was the first time the inheritance felt small. Not financially. Emotionally. $200 million could buy almost anything, but it couldn't buy one afternoon with the father I never truly knew. Laura continued cooperating with Detective Reed's investigation. She gave them documents, answered questions, and stopped trying to protect herself from every consequence. When I went to see her, she looked exhausted. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said. I sat across from her. "Do you regret it?" "Every day." "The affair?" "Yes." "The money?" "Yes." "The custody fight?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Most of all, what I did to you." She didn't reach for me. She didn't ask me to understand. "I made you hate your father because I was afraid of what would happen if you knew the truth." I swallowed. "You were still the mother who raised me." She looked up. "I love you for that." Her lips trembled. "But loving you doesn't mean pretending you didn't betray me." She nodded slowly. "I know." For once, there was nothing else to argue about. Victor faced prosecution as the evidence against him grew stronger. Richard's archive records also helped separate the family trust from the old fraud, clearing the inheritance from a scheme that had poisoned my parents' marriage. I kept the money, but I refused to let it become my identity. Part of it went into creating a foundation for children trapped inside destructive custody battles. Kids who love both parents. Kids who were being forced to choose sides. Kids who deserve facts instead of weapons made from adult anger. Daniel once asked me, "Why this?" I looked at him. "Because nobody protected me from the fight." Months passed. Then one quiet morning, I went to Richard's grave. I carried his final letter with me. For years, I had imagined standing there with anger. Instead, I felt something harder to name. Grief, maybe, for the father he had been, and for the father he could have been. I placed the letter beside the headstone. "I spent 20 years hating you because of a lie," I whispered. "But I'm not going to spend the next 20 worshiping you because I learned the truth." The wind moved softly through the cemetery. I stood there for another moment. I didn't forgive everything. I didn't need to. Richard had failed me. Laura had betrayed me. Victor had used both of them. But their mistakes no longer decided who I was. The money wasn't my victory. Revenge wasn't my victory. Knowing the truth and choosing what to do with it was. I turned away from my father's grave and started walking. For the first time, I wasn't carrying my mother's version of the past. I wasn't carrying my father's version either. I walked away without forgiving everything. But I finally walked away knowing the truth belonged to me.